The Twins fall to Cleveland 4-2 in the home opener. I got our expert, CJ Baumgartner. He's going to help us break it all down. It's all coming up next on the Locked On Twins POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Twins POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's up? Back in the lab, back at it. Another Twins POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. That's the man right there, CJ Baumgartner, Twins expert over at Zone Coverage Minnesota. He's on X, at BombCJ30. And CJ, before we jump into all the action from today, quick reminder, today's episode brought to us by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, man. Cleveland coming into town, got this 3-game series, Twins home opener. You couldn't ask for better weather in this one, really. Pablo Lopez on the mound, got into some trouble in the fourth, gives up 3 runs. He goes 5 2/3, 6 hits, 4 runs. 3 of those earned. Meanwhile, the bats, man, this lineup, they stayed cold for most of this one. Alex Kirilloff, though, he triples in back-to-back games. He's been a bright spot. Julian busts out of his 0-for-11 slump. He goes yard in the 5th. Twins also scored on a wild pitch to cut the lead in half in the 7th inning. 4 runs to 2. Not enough in the end, though. Tanner Beebe, man, strong outing for Cleveland. 5 1/3, 9 Ks, 0 walks. How about that ratio? And only 1 run earned. Twins lose their home opener 4-2. They dropped to 3-3 on the year. I'm just going to kick it over to you, CJ, to start. Biggest takeaways, maybe your 8 topics from this one.
I think the biggest takeaway is going to be most people's, and that's hits with runners in scoring position. Obviously, we know the story of the game, especially from watching the first half of the 2023 Twins. It felt like a game like that where, maybe you don't get the best start out of Pablo, but that's good enough. He got a quality start, almost 5 2/3, and gave up only 3 runs, and kind of just really just one of those things where the Twins got a bunch of base runners and just couldn't quite get that big hit.
Yeah, let's dive a little bit more into Pablo's day. This guy, I mean, hey, a lot of Cy Young buzz heading into the year. He looked every bit the part in his first start. He was rock solid in that first start. Today, honestly, man, I thought he was cooking again. 31 pitches through the first 3 innings. Everything's going according to plan. He gives up 2 pretty weak soft hits, top of the 4th to start out. And then maybe what I think maybe changed the complexion of this game. He struck out Ramirez, the number 3 hitter, but Vasquez couldn't hold on to it. 2 pitches later, he ends up getting a hit. So instead of 2 outs there, they end up getting a run. They go on a mini rally there. They end up putting 3 runs on him. And again, of the 3 or 4 hits given up that inning, almost none of them were really sharply hit balls, if we're being honest. So maybe some bad luck today. I don't know. But for the most part, I thought he still looked like, the Pablo we know and love. And in a 162-game season, let's be real, you're going to have some outings where some things just don't go your way, right?
Right, exactly. And if this is the worst of Pablo Lopez, I think we're going to be all right.
We're going to be okay.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, really, outside of that 1 inning where things kind of got away, he pitched well. And obviously, towards the end, kind of got pulled in the 5th inning after giving up that base runner. But it really felt like when Pablo Lopez struggled in 2023 from like maybe mid-May to mid-June, somewhere in there, it would kind of be starts like that where you look at his final stat line and you'd be like, okay, this is a fine outing. And then all of a sudden you just look at 1 inning that kind of really makes it from a stellar outing into a meh, it's okay outing. And that was kind of the case today.
Yeah, well said. Still kind of getting used to some new faces all around the roster. Thunderbuck. That's got to be the coolest, funnest name of them all, though, right? And his walk-up music, by the way, coming out of the pen, Thunderstruck by AC/DC.
Perfect.
Come on, dude. That's just beautiful. That's just art right there. Thoughts on the relievers coming into today? Thunderbuck, Cole Sands got a couple innings under their belt today. How do you feel about that group, though, through these first 6 games?
I mean, that was the question, is how shaky was this group going to be without the top end talent? But the Twins, like we talked about on the first show last week after the home opener, or after the season opener, they got a deep unit. They invested a lot of major league talent in this bullpen, and the floor is definitely higher than what it was a year ago. They haven't had a ton of high leverage innings to pitch in yet. but they've avoided kind of that big blow up inning for the most part this season. And I think that's a good case. Funderburk obviously going to be a big lefty out of the pen, but Sands is kind of that last guy up, and he did all right. And I think overall, I've been impressed just with how they've kind of kept this unit together through the first week.
Encouraging stuff, knowing that eventually here you're going to get Johan Duran and some more help along the way. So if you can just ride out this wave in the meantime, maybe show some flashes along the way, that's encouraging stuff top to bottom. Time for our favorite segment here. It's the Rocco Report. I'm just going to tee you up. Tell us your favorite or least favorite move or decision, whatever it may be from today's game. The Rocco Report says what?
Well, the thing is, the Rocco Report, there's not like a huge hot take on today.
Not much there today. Not much meat on the bone today.
Right. The one thing, if you want to nitpick, could maybe be Ed Julian and not going with the platoon in that option, letting him hit against the lefty in a spot where, he got his chance and he didn't quite get there. So that's one, it's not necessarily a bad take. It's not a Rocco screwed this up, but it's fascinating. No. I'd like to know his thought process in that one to why he didn't opt to platoon and why he gave him a shot in that standpoint. So I don't necessarily have a heater coming in there, but that's just one where I look back and I'm like, why did he decide in that situation not to? It's not a critique. It's not a what's he thinking, but I want to know what he's thinking.
I'd just be curious to know the logic behind it. That's all.
Right.
How about Reese Walter in the stream? How about Kepler should not be hitting ahead of Carlos Correa right now? How about that take?
So I was thinking about that in my Rocco Report too. I didn't want to be too harsh on Kepler because I was last season. And of course he had that second half that made me eat crow a little bit, but also it's a fair question to bring up because he has not hit well through the first week of the season. And he gets the benefit of the doubt from being that guy who's been there forever. I certainly think he's hitting a little too high, but also, I don't know, obviously you want to mix and match those lefties and righties, and he just naturally is the guy to bump up. So it's not, I'm going to guess it's not necessarily that Kepler should be the 4-hitter, but it's just kind of out of all the lefties, Wallner hasn't had a great start to the season, and that's why he was kind of towards the bottom. I think that's why he's up at 4, but yeah, I mean, I don't blame people for being frustrated on that one.
Just some box score scouting here for you, which, doesn't always tell the whole story. I get it, but just something to go off of here. Carlos Correa, 3 for 4. He's been red hot. Byron Buxton, 0 for 4, 3 Ks. Julian, 1 for 5 with that home run. Kirilloff, 1 for 4 with that triple. Kepler, you just talked about him, 0 for 4 with 2 Ks. Santana, 0 for 4 with 2 Ks. A lot of Ks today. Again, BB through 5 innings, 9 Ks, 0 walks. Just final thoughts when you see some box score numbers here. Anyone else jump out to you for good or bad?
Well, I think it has to go without saying, and that's the strikeouts. They were 0 for 12 with runners in scoring position. Right. A lot of strikeouts in here. And this is what kind of gets me to stat here that I've looked up. So the Twins last year were not great with runners in scoring position in the first half. It was very notable. But they got a decent amount of opportunities like they did today. So they were 15th last year through the first half of the season with runners in scoring position. They had like a 700 OPS or below 750 OPS with runners in scoring position, but they got opportunities. They struck out the third most with runners in scoring position last season. So that's not great. But a fascinating thing I found out in the second half when they had an 800 plus OPS with runners in scoring position, they actually struck out the most out of any team in baseball with runners in scoring position. Wow. It's a marginal difference, 26.4 in the first half to 26.8 in the second half. It's just kind of going to be the thing with this team for better or worse. They get opportunities. Cleveland got that big hit that they needed in that rally they had in the fourth inning, and the Twins just never quite got that opportunity.
Well said. All right, plenty more deep dive on this one, including Alex Kirilloff's hot start. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, this episode is brought to you by Game Time, because you should never have to worry when buying tickets to any big event. That's why Game Time, it's the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets to any local event, concerts, comedy shows, sporting events, even Broadway theater. And with killer last-minute deals and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And with their all-in prices, Game Time shows you exactly how much you're spending with no hidden fees. It's time to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. See for yourself how easy it is. Just create an account. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, just create any new account and redeem your code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Game time. Terms apply. So you and I talked a lot about Royce Lewis after that game one, just how huge of a loss that's going to be. And in turn, what's the ripple effect going to look like without him? And I'd say for the most part, it's been pretty evident. There's some power. There's some juice missing from the lineup right now. I mean, sure, Twins rallied back a few times late in a couple games, but I'd say for the large majority, it's been a pretty lackluster lineup for the most part. So my question is, which one of these young guys would you say has the most pressure on them to be the next guy in line? Because we've said it before with so many young guys that, granted, a lot of these guys have already shown some flashes, maybe have some great potential, but with that comes a lot of ups and downs typically, right? A lot of inconsistencies early in a lot of young guys' careers. Alex Kirilloff, he's been a maniac early on. That's super encouraging, obviously. We talked about Julian had that solo shot today, busted out of that 0 for 11 slump. Remember ESPN's bold prediction we talked about last week had him hitting 30 home runs, 400 on base percentage, excuse me. But who's the guy for you that you think needs to maybe start showing something here sometime soon, kind of help lift this whole thing off the ground, so to speak?
Right. Well, Kirilloff has kind of done the work there, so he's kind of out in this race. If we kind of go off the rookies last year who were really impactful in Wallner and Julian, I got to say it's Julian that's probably has the most pressure to do so because of the fact that Wallner kind of is who he is. He's going to be a high strikeout, high power guy. In a way, you could say he has that pressure, but I think overall it's got to be Julian, especially because if Brooks Lee gets healthy, not saying he's going to bench him or whatever, but he could be kind of fighting for a little bit of that, depending on how third base shakes out. But the big thing is Julian is expected to be a better all-around hitter than Wallner was. So he has that more pressure, not just to contribute, but to be a high contributor for this Twins team. And he had a good home run today. He had the strikeouts, they're all borderline. Julian is a guy who's got a great eye at the plate. If he doesn't think it's a strike, he's not going to swing at it. But then there's that old baseball edge of protecting the zone. Anything that's close, you got to offer at. And Julian had some, if there's nobody on base, there's 2 outs in the inning, and you take a strikeout looking on a borderline pitch, I get it. It's a little more frustrating when it happens when the bases are loaded with 2 outs or something like that. So it's a minor nitpick. Obviously, he's a great eye at the plate. He's a good bat. He hit a home run today, but those 3 strikeouts just came at really inopportune times and pitches that were strikes for the most part. They just were borderline, and he's just got to offer at those and fight them off and keep that at bat alive.
They're not all going to be, MLB all-stars, especially early on, right? They're not all going to pan out. Just statistically, they're not probably all going to pan out. But if you can get Kirilloff just playing the way he is to continue this hot streak, and then get Edward Julian starting to pick up a little steam here and kind of get back on track and kind of get to that level that, we all know he can get to, while, Royce Lewis starts to, obviously mend off the field a little bit. But if they can just take over just those 2 guys alone, I think have shown enough promise between those 2 mixed in with your Correas, your Buxtons. Kepler's going to eventually figure it out. Speaking of, forget about just the young guys. Who's the one guy maybe you're most concerned with after these first 6 games? Kepler hitting what? 059, I want to say. He always does this, though, doesn't he? Starts out slow, second half of the season, really just busts out of his shell.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. The easy answer is Kepler, and that's probably my answer. But as I mentioned earlier, I said that last year, and then the second half, he made me look like an idiot. So that's going to be how he is. It's just frustrating when it's in the middle of a slump, and especially like one of the commenters mentioned, he's hitting 4th in the lineup, and you just can't have your 4 hitter going 1 for 13 or an 0 for or a 0.59 batting average in some of these spots. But it's got to be the long game with Kepler. But it's concerning in the fact of he does get a lot of those opportunities, and he's deserved them. He's earned the right to get some of them. But also, we've kind of seen the up and down nature of Max Kepler over the last few years.
Well said. Good breakdown there. All right, don't go anywhere. We're going to preview Saturday's Game 2 with Cleveland. Joe Ryan on the mound for that one. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode brought to you by Amazon Fire TV, the #1 streaming platform around. Fire TV, that's your one-stop shop destination for everything sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. With Amazon Fire TV, they offer amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TVs. That gives you access to millions of movies and TV episodes, not to mention free and live cable TV as well. Whether it's the 2024 MLB season, the PGA Masters, or the March Madness tournament, trust me when I say you're going to want to have a Fire TV at your fingertips on every device possible. And now with their own specific Fire TV channels, that includes all of our daily content from every Locked On channel and a vast majority of pro leagues and college conferences as well. You got to go check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and your Alexa devices. Fire TV channels, it's the new latest and greatest way to tap into all your watching needs. So don't miss out. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/Locked On Fire TV. That's Amazon.com/Locked On Fire TV. All right. I don't know if you saw this yet or not, but The Athletic just came out with their starting pitching rotation power rankings. So if you haven't seen it already, I want your guess where you think the Twins starting pitching rotation only ranks among the league according to The Athletic. What do you think? Top of your head, knee-jerk reaction. Go.
Oh, well, I think if it's just like beginning of the season, I'd say they probably would rank them top 10 in baseball. If it's off kind of the first week of the season where the back half of the rotation was shaky, I'm going to probably say it's closer to around like 14.
Okay, good guess, good explanation, good breakdown there. It was released yesterday, so it was after this first week of the season. And because they did struggle a little bit, they are ranked 16th out of 30, just below the halfway mark, kind of middle of the pack. So they go on to talk about obviously losing Sonny Gray, you lose Kenta Maeda, Desclafani, he's out for the year. That's kind of a gut punch they talked about. But glowing remarks for Pablo, Cy Young favorite, good enough 2 and 3 with Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober. And then they said what's really going to make or break them this season, essentially, is what they get from 4 and 5, Paddock and Louis Varland. What's your assessment of that? Or what's your assessment of the assessment, I guess? Like, do you agree that it feels like right now kind of a one-trick pony to a degree? The whole thing is very top-heavy to a degree with a lot of wild cards past that 1 and 2?
Yeah, I think so. And it's obviously not the 2022 rotation where it was Gray and Ryan and nothing. So the floor is a lot higher than that season. But yeah, I mean, I think the assessment's close. It's really going to break how that back half of the rotation is in those final 2 spots. Varland, we saw the issues with the home runs, and some he's had last year, but also with Paddock, he had a nice little run for the Twins in 2022 before getting Tommy John surgery. He didn't start at all in 2023. He came out of the bullpen, pitched really well, but we haven't seen him pitch a lot as a starter. And while I think Paddock has great stuff, and I'll bet on him having a nice season, the wild card is that we just haven't seen Paddock do it consistently since 2021. Pitching on a major league rotation. And that's the biggest wild card. And not that I think it's concerning, but that'd be the one I'm most concerned about is he going to hold up because he just hasn't pitched that long. And we haven't seen him in a Twins uniform pitch over a season from a starting perspective.
Yeah, we'll believe it when we see it kind of thing, right? Like we all know, we all remember when they pulled off that massive deal for Paddock. Obviously, we know how that whole thing turned out. He gets hurt, but now that he's finally healthy and ready to roll, hey, we're still kind of holding our breath, waiting to see here, is this guy going to live up to the expectations we once had? The AL Central, man, is it truly as bad as everybody makes it out to be? Because the whole premise for all these experts picking the Twins to repeat was pretty much solely based on, okay, the division being arguably the worst in the league again. So not so much like, oh, the Twins building off last year's success so much. So I know it's early here still, but the Tigers, I mean, they just lost their first game today versus the Mets. Cleveland 6-2 now. They're actually from a run average perspective, I think they're third in the MLB right now, most runs scored on average per game. Can we count on everyone else, though, to be as bad as the experts say? I mean, does this kind of hot start for some of these other teams worry you at all, or way too early to tell?
I think it's too early to make season-long assumptions, but I think the division is going to be more competitive, and I think that was always going to be the case because Cleveland still has the pitching to compete, and their rotation was banged up last year. So they have the pitching, even if their lineup, I know they've scored a lot of runs, but traditionally their lineup hasn't been a juggernaut, and they have the pitching to compete. I think they'll be competitive. The Tigers have too much young talent. If they don't start competing, it's concerning. The White Sox are just going to be bad. I think we all know that. The Royals are going to be better than they were a year ago, but only because they were barely better than Oakland, a team that wasn't even trying to compete a year ago. So there's nowhere for them to go but up. That being said, yeah, I think this division is going to be more competitive just to the fact that Cleveland will bounce back and they'll have a nice season. I think they're not going to be as bad as they were a year ago when they kind of fell apart. But I think the Tigers are that wild card where there could be a team that competes for the division or that talent doesn't quite develop. And not that they end up being the White Sox, but they enter into that White Sox camp of we have a lot of young talent that isn't quite panning out and developing, and we're kind of stuck in the mud again. But I think, Twins can win the division. Obviously, it's too early to tell that they're going to be third place or something like that. They still are very much in the mix, but the strong starts by Cleveland and Detroit show that this is certainly going to be a lot more of a dogfight than last year when everybody basically just kind of fell apart and you were just the only team left standing.
And Cleveland, okay, they played the A's for, the first 3-4 games, whatever. But you're right. I think Detroit, I'm with you. Maybe the sleeper, maybe wild card team of these 5 here. I know baseball's, way different than like football, right? It's a long process when it comes to farm systems and prospects and rookies and young guys. But don't the Tigers have like some serious studs coming up? Not only that are already up, yes, young, blooming, developing, progressing still. It's going to be a wait and see kind of thing. But I looked at the farm system rankings, man. Tigers like top 2, maybe number 1 in the entire MLB.
Yeah, they've been, when you're pretty bad for a while, you have a chance to accumulate a lot of those picks and a lot of those prospects and traded away some guys. And yeah, I don't have the list in front of me, but they do have a nice farm system, and it's one that they're going to lean on and try and help out because they have some of the, they have some of those guys coming up like the Casey Mizes, the Spencer Torkelsons. They have some of those players who've already made that appearance. But yeah, when you can keep kind of throwing more prospects on, it's what the Twins hope to do, right? When they bring up Brooks Lee and they bring up Austin Martin and they bring up, maybe a David Festa coming up, exactly, Walker Jenkins down there in the farm system. It's what the Twins want to be in a position to do as well. But yeah, the Tigers right now are in a position to kind of, they feel like this is the year where they can jump into the race and be competitive after finishing second in the division, I believe the last season. So yeah, they're a team that's going to be fascinating. Again, they could be the White Sox where everything falls apart really quickly, or they could be a team that kind of sees their window open up. And right now it's looking a lot more like the second one.
Yeah, well said. All right, let's close out with a quick little preview for Saturday's game, game 2 of the series. You got Joe Ryan on the mound making his second appearance, obviously. A lot of pressure on him. Again, we just talked about it, him to step into this number 2 spot for Sonny Gray. How do you look in his first start and your quick thoughts on his season outlook, I guess, as a whole, and what do you want to see from him Saturday?
Well, I mentioned last week that I feel like Joe Ryan's got to bounce back from that second half just because he got hurt and he lost all that momentum and he was a borderline all-star last year in the first half. I think he had as good of a start as he could have. Obviously, he's not on Pablo's level, but he's a really nice, second starter on a good team. And I think that he looked the part in that first start. And I see no reason why he can't repeat it again with the start on, I was about to say Friday, but with the start on Saturday. I think Joe Ryan's going to have that bounce back season like I talked about last week. And I think that we'll see that happen again on Saturday.
Well done, my man. A lot of fun, as always, win or lose. Home opener in the books. Twins lose to Cleveland 4-2. Game 2 Saturday afternoon. Joe Ryan on the mound for that one. First pitch, 1:10 p.m. Central Standard Time. As always, huge shout out to everybody that joined us on the stream. Can't wait to do this with you all season long. Rest assured, we're going to be back each and every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. Quick reminder, go check out all CJ's work on Twitter at BombCJ30. Anything new up on Zone Coverage MN, we can go check out.
Yeah, and put up an article yesterday talking about Austin Martin and what his role can be, and if it's going to be a limited time like Julian did last year at the beginning of the season. It was a very brief stint early, but he gave you enough to want more, and Austin Martin has an opportunity to do that, and I kind of talk about what he has to do and the ways he can do that as a contributor.
I can't wait to check that out. I know the entire crew over at Zone Coverage MN always ripping it up, so can't wait to check out all your work over there, not just today, but the entire season as well. That'll do it for us today. He's CJ Baumgartner. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Until next time, signing out.